welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks, how to get it just right. Thank you so much for joining us for another insightful and deeply impactful conversation. Today's conversation is going to be about learning and why learning is truly preparing us for life. Learning needs to be approached with fun and enthusiasm, and learning needs to make us better every day so that we remain relevant and are in a position to create impact. And you may ask, what has this got to do with Goldilocks? Goldilocks to me is teaching us how to get things just right. Nothing we do can be too hot or too cold. We can't show up too hard or too soft. How do we show up in that centeredness so that from that place of centeredness, we get things just right? And talking about education, research shows that we can each influence only 3 levels from where we are, just 3. So imagine if I come from an extreme right end, I can only influence 3 levels towards the center. If I come from the extreme left, I still can only influence 3 levels towards the center. Notice towards the center is the influence because I'm already at the extreme. I can't go in the other direction. But what if we each use our learning process to take perspective, because nothing is absolute. Each of our truth is our perspective, and somebody else's perspective can be different. And when we take perspective, we move slowly towards the center. And now take for a moment, you're at the center, and it doesn't have to be dead center, somewhere left or right of center. Now, all of a sudden, you can influence everybody where you are, and 3 levels to your right and 3 levels to your left, because your influence is 3 levels from where you are. You automatically level up your center of influence the minute you move towards the center. And it is the ability to learn and take perspective that takes us there. And we are living in a polarized world where everybody has picked sides and nobody is willing to move to the center. And that is part of the reason why we are stuck. So to get us unstuck, to get us propelling forward, let's take the time today to talk about how is learning going to help us? How is learning through fun and games and activity going to help us? And to have this conversation with me is somebody I recently met, but absolutely enjoy talking to and cannot wait to get more wisdom from, is Steve Schechter. Steve, welcome to Unleash Your Inner Goldilocks.
Thank you so much, Dr. Kaz. And thank you for that very insightful and fascinating frame that you've put around learning. I couldn't agree more with the centrality of it and the importance of it.
Thank you. Thank you. You accidentally started a tutoring business that has become a learning platform. And to me, that whole journey is fascinating. Can you take a moment and share with our audience how it came about and why you named the organization the way you named it?
I love the question. So the very act of accidentally starting a tutoring company was an act of learning. I had been a lifelong musician, and that was where my heart resided. I was also a very capable product manager, and that was where my head resided. And I needed personally to fuse heart and head. And I had been volunteering with young people in New York City, and that was engaging my heart in a very deep way. And that was how my accidental tutoring company came about, because someone who was in a position to refer students said, "I appreciate your commitment to young people, Steve. I wonder if you'd be willing to help our young people." And because I didn't think he was serious, I said, "Sure, no problem," and was surprised months later when a flow of students began to come my way. And that was how my accidental tutoring company was born. It was in itself an act of learning for me, because I was evolving in a certain way and chose to make a kind of leap and fuse the 2 different sides of my being into one. And in a way, Dr. Kaz, it was an act of me finding my center. That was where I got to be, in the center. And from there, it's been a more happy and stable place And that was 20 years ago. So a happy.
Ah,
So to your question about the name of the company, Much Smarter, from the very beginning, I saw that from what students were presenting to me, that a consistent pattern was that they deeply underestimated themselves. So a very common theme in the conversations I had with them was, in effect, you are much smarter than you think. And literally, our first name of the company was Much Smarter Than You Think, and it just got shortened to Much Smarter. So that's the genesis of the name. It is fundamentally a habit of thinking. It's our number one thinking habit that we teach, and that is you don't know your limits.
I absolutely love the premise of this. And it's true. As we are growing up, so many adults in our life put all these negative thoughts, or when they are irritated, they tell us, right? Hey, you're not as smart as you think, or oh my God, I can't believe you're so dumb. And there is research to show that children under the age of 10, 70 to 75% of the children, if you give them the sentence, I am, and ask them to finish it, the way they finish it is negative. I am ugly. I am fat. I am dumb. Whatever the negative reinforcement they're getting, and adults in their life don't realize they're giving it. And they grow up with that negative self thought. And I'm so glad you're breaking that mold. Tell me how your life has transformed and what you have learned about yourself by building this organization and creating opportunities for children to think outside the box.
It it's been fundamentally joyful and liberating. Um, I, I think I've always been service oriented, so I don't want to paint this as something brand new, but experiencing every day the work of helping others unfold has just been enormously joyful and liberating for me. Um, there is no ceiling to the work, and that's great too. But it feels like every time I help a student discover their potential and learn to act upon it, I feel like I'm doing something for education as a whole and kind of making my contribution to the whole. So it's been an extraordinary journey, one that I feel that I'm just beginning. And I have a feeling that 20 years from now, I will still feel like I'm just beginning.
I am smiling because I'm seeing your hats and your guitar behind you. And there is a musician and a poet in you, right? So, how are you integrating your music and obviously your creativity is helping drive it, but how are you intentionally integrating your music and creativity into this endeavor?
That's a great question. There's a two-part answer. Number one, you spoke earlier about learning can be fun. Learning need not be something seen as burdensome or arduous. For me, music was the main metaphor I used as a way to learn other things. It was very useful for me because I was naturally good at music. However, when I discovered the difference between unpracticed me and practiced me, I saw such a huge difference that I gained a reverence for practice. I don't just love the outcome. I actually love the process perhaps more than the outcome. So, in effect, early on, I learned how to learn, and I took that understanding into every learning endeavor. Now, the metaphor here, though, is that there's a game. In other words, every new thing that I learn in the same spirit that I learned a complex classical piano piece. I look at it as a whole. I lovingly break it down. I maintain a vision of what the thing is going to sound like in the end, but what I'm working on each given day and each given moment is not too difficult. And yet I give it the same joy and love that I would give the finished piece. And in the end, what began as difficult became easy. And because I know that most students already have a game that they're passionate about, I typically, as part of our methodology, I typically help them build a bridge between a game that they already love and understand to a new game that they might be fearful of. So, for a quick example, I loved and understood music. I feared math, but I built a bridge and I no longer fear math. And I just about love math. I won't say I love math with the same passion that I love music, but I like it a great deal.
That is so brilliant. And I can't stop smiling as you're talking because it so totally resonates for me. And people don't realize music and math and physics are all interconnected. When children are exposed to music, they become better in science, and it's vibration. And we as beings are made of vibrations. Our DNA is vibration. I was reading some research that talks about when you listen to music, there's certain type of music that makes your whole body go. And it's not just humans, even animals. I'm a pet person, I have parrots. And the parrots dance too to certain music. And that is when the DNA of the creature actually resonates with the DNA of the music, the vibration of the music, and that creates a rhythm and the movement automatically happens. To me, that whole thing is so fascinating, and you then being able to connect it to use it as a bridge is brilliant.
Well, thank
So, yeah,
you.
go ahead.
No, please.
So, using this approach as you have helped young people, would you share a success story with us so that people remember stories and stories are very powerful?
Yes, my challenge would be where to begin, but I'm gonna talk about Jonah because we're on the subject of games. And so Jonah was one of my early students, and Jonah was a very avid tennis player and very avid basketball player. He approached me because he wanted to do well on a standardized test and did not seem to have the tools. If I gave him, say, 20 math questions to do, he'd get perhaps two of them. Um, if I gave him 20 reading questions to do, he'd perhaps get four of them. And in addition, his parents had taken him to get tested, and he had a book this thick about all the reasons why he couldn't learn, or all the reasons why he was challenged at learning. And yet, Jonah, I'm sorry, Jonah was um, intent on doing well, so we needed to build a bridge. So I discovered from his mom that Jonah, when he practiced his tennis, would practice from 8 in the morning till 8 in the evening without let up. And he did the same thing with basketball. So I asked Jonah, I said, what would happen, Jonah, if you practiced math the same way that you practice your tennis? And he said to me without any hesitation, Steve, I would be a math monster. And so we built a bridge for Jonah. And Jonah, in the time I worked with him, did not quite become a math monster, but his score on that standardized test was something like 93 to 95 percentile, meaning that he had made a huge improvement, and in effect changed his own set point about how he saw himself as a learner and as a scholar. So that's a story that sticks with me because it demonstrates the power of a game.
That is powerful and profound, right? Because you've changed the trajectory of a child's life and they go on to do great things because now you have reinforced their confidence and you've given them the tools on how to learn based on what comes naturally for them.
That was the key element there, yes.
Yes. So talk to me about what makes this journey exciting for you in terms of finding out what motivates and inspires every child, and then building the bridge from that to what they need to accomplish. Because in a regular school system, teachers don't do that and they don't have the bandwidth or capacity to do that. And I want to highlight how you're doing it so that maybe it becomes a blueprint for people who are watching and listening.
Yes, I think that the exciting thing, I think the fortunate thing is that I got to create my own model and exist in my own world. In other words, it parents approached me, and I think in the beginning the model and the process were not as clearly articulated as now, but I was kind of had a hypothesis and I was working on it. But the fact that I could do it in my own environment was probably very helpful. Let's talk about one reason why that can be so helpful. You know, we talked earlier about how young people get unfortunate ideas about their limitations. That's not only the fault of the parent or an educator. I think it's partly built into the environment. I don't think young people can help comparing themselves with others. They observe. I mean, I've had students who've had two or three very brilliant older siblings, and the comparisons they go through crush them. So the ability to take a student and enable her to work in her own bubble has been a great privilege. And so I've had 20 years now to do a lot of experimenting, all within a core hypothesis. And the core hypothesis has been that our success is a product of how we think, how we feel, and how we learn. And that's enabled me to build a model that works really quite well. And I think that's the exciting part, is that I get to keep doing it. I get to keep refining it. I get to keep having the joy of working with students one at a time. At the same time, having the tools we've built create the promise of helping perhaps thousands or even hundreds of thousands of students over time.
That is so beautiful. Before we go too much further, I would love for you to take a moment and share with our audience how they can get a hold of you so that they can learn from you as well as engage their kids through your program.
So our website is www.muchsmarter.com. I have a LinkedIn profile. Did I give you that LinkedIn profile?
Yes, we will share it with the release of the program.
Yeah, the LinkedIn profile, the website, and reach out to me in either place. I'd love to talk to you. And that's a great place to start.
Thank you so much, Stephen. What I would love to do now is open this up to our live audience so that they can share their thoughts, ask the question, and bring a little more excitement and fun into this, since you already have shared that you love to do this through fun and engagement.
Lovely.
Go ahead, Bridget.
Hi there. I am so enthused and excited by what you're talking about, because for me, I have two children, a boy and a girl. They are 22 and 19, and they didn't fit in the system. And listening to you talk, I just so wish I'd had that information for myself, because I was the parent that told them, whether I knew they were brilliant or not, that they were brilliant and clever. And one was very academic and one wasn't, but incredibly intelligent. And listening to you, in fact, Dr. Cass asked the question I was going to ask about getting mainstream in education. I think you're right. I don't think you can affect mainstream education because there's so much more going on. But do you think there's more we can do to influence and educate parents? Because what I see in the UK is a lot of parents abdicating responsibility for how their children are shaped in a way that I don't remember when I grew up?
I think that's a great question, Bridget. I think that the short answer to the question is that I think the most influence we parents can have, and I'm in fact a parent also. I think the most influence we parents can have is that to keep fully realizing ourselves, because kids observe and they learn less from what we say and more from what we are. And I think that the big thing that parents can do is, if a parent um, is able to share their confidence rather than sharing their anxiety. I know that there's probably several pages behind this statement, but if I could teach a parent one thing, is give them your confidence and not your anxiety. And if we could do just that, I think we can make a difference in the lives of our children. I think the longer answer is, we teach children habits of thinking, feeling, and learning. We've identified 10 thinking habits, 10 feeling habits, and 10 learning habits. I think that parents can usefully engage in learning what those are, trying them on for themselves, and then encouraging their children, where applicable, to apply them as they can influence a child. I mean, I find that there's only so much, especially when a child reaches a certain age, they become less willing to listen, but that doesn't mean they can't be influenced.
Yes, I agree completely. And in fact, I've always believed exactly what you said, that the only thing that you can possibly do as a parent is give your child confidence. And that's the way that they deal with everything else that comes at them. But yes, no, I agree with you 100%. That's really interesting. Thank you.
Thank you, Bridget.
Thank you so much for that brilliant question. And I love where you took the response, Steve. I remember walking from graduate housing to graduate classroom at Indiana State. And I wanted to just peek into spaces because I'm new in the United States. And I had to cut across the parking lot of a middle school. And only for the teacher to see, in every classroom, there was a poster on that drop ceiling wall. And it says, "Who you are speaks so loud. The children are not hearing a word of what you are saying."
Yeah.
And that has stuck with me. It was a reminder for every teacher, more than what you're teaching, who you are and how you show up is the biggest lesson. Show up right. And so that's the same message you are giving for the parents. And that is truly, truly profound. Thank you. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Dr. Cass.
Robin, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll hop in here. Of course, I love anything related to music and education and children. A question I have is there's I don't know if it's fairly recent, but probably maybe within the last, well, definitely maybe over 5 years, 10 years, that rather than focusing on how smart you are, because a child really can't do a lot to make themselves smarter per se. There's some things you can do, but not necessarily, but rather to focus on things that they have control over. Like, how hard are you working? Are you trying? Are you increasing your creativity? Are you increasing, maybe looking at things in a different perspective? So how are you able to tease out in the child's mind what they have some control over, that they actually can affect change within themselves and their environment, as opposed to, and I say this because sometimes the kids who are really smart, they find that if they get into a new situation, well, I'm not sure if I want to try that, because if I don't do it very well, then I won't look as smart as people keep telling me I am. So how do you kind of thread that needle with helping them find You know, we always like to say, oh, you're so smart. But how can we maybe tweak that just a little bit to say, wow, you worked really hard and you studied really hard, and wow, it really paid off because you did well on that test.
In our methodology, it all becomes, it's all about the process, because we frame a learning challenge as a game of skill. It all becomes the process you use to play the game. It's not about your innate talent. And I give students, typically when I talk to them for the first time, I give them the example of, well, what would happen if my wife persuaded me to join a ballroom dancing class, or you name your type of dancing? I don't have any reason to expect that I would be especially nimble or graceful in the first class, but because I know how to play a game, I would patiently learn the steps. I would practice the steps as many times as I had to till they became natural and easy for me, and I would enjoy the class. And candidly, I don't even know in the beginning how good a dancer I'm going to be. So if we take that approach to things, we often surprise ourselves and discover we're actually smarter than we thought.
Yeah. Okay, great. Good.
That is such a smart answer, right? It's palatable. It's, as they say, it's like eating an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
And then choosing to take step by step. And all of a sudden, when you put it together, you see you've mastered it. I need to take that same approach to swimming. I'm still trying to teach myself to swim.
There you go. And Robin, one more point. I think we at Much Smarter are kind of evolving towards maybe a more satisfactory definition of smart and a more satisfactory definition of success. I have nothing against talent. I am a big fan of talent. However, I believe that we're truly smart if we become adept at using our minds, and we use our minds to create a life that we want. And I think that may be the ultimate definition of smart, and maybe the ultimate definition of successful.
I love where you're taking this, Steve, and I believe the world needs it. The children need it. My personal definition of success is, have I mastered the ability to find the joy within without looking for it outside? And am I able to create a world that is full of peace for myself, so that from that place of peace, I can be the center of what holds things together so that I don't fall apart? And to me, that is success. It's not the titles, it's not the education. Because if I had everything but no joy and no peace, I have nothing.
I think that's a profound and beautiful thought, Dr. Kaz.
Thank you. So as we bring this to a close, what word of advice would you have for parents and teachers? Because teachers are struggling today in the educational system all over the world. How to keep the structural components in play so that they can meet the standardized requirements and still show up in their humanity to help shape the children. And sometimes it's a no-win situation. Parents are too busy working 1 or 2 jobs, and they're exhausted when they come home, right? So everybody is pulled in different directions. What advice would you have for parents and teachers, or one for each, in terms of how they can show up better, be better, to help the children become smarter?
That's the great question, and I have to thank you for asking incredibly wonderful and fruitful questions. This is I'll again give the short answer. The short answer structurally is to empower the student. If I'm a teacher who's got a classroom of 30, the happiest outcome I could have is if I have 30 students in my classroom who know how to learn and who know how to work with what they have. So our answer, much smarter answer, our team's answer to the structural challenges that we face is empower the student. Give the student the tools and the skills they need to navigate the challenges. And that's where the greatest leverage is.
Beautiful. Thank you so very much for sharing your wisdom, bringing your fun and engaging way of learning so that we build a community of young people who can figure things out and who can build a better world that we find ourselves in today. So thank you so much for your work, your service, and most of all, the joy with which you do it, Steve. And to our live audience, thank you for always showing up and asking deeply insightful questions to amplify the message and the tenets of our special guest. To our audience out there, we are never too old to learn. Regardless of how old we are, regardless of where in life we are, we're always learning. So take the nuggets of wisdom Steve had just shared and use it for yourself. And as you evolve and you transform, you can pass it on to the young people in your life. They don't even have to be your own children. There are enough children in this world, and there are enough adults. If we came together, we can actually offset the challenges parents and teachers face. And together, as adults and young people, we can build a better world. But for that, we have to think of this as a fun, engaging activity that we all learn and grow and create impact in a lasting way.